Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. We are joined today by Jeff Manchester from iZotope. Great to see you.
Happy to be back.
Always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
And today we are checking out the latest version of what I would call kind of the complete vocal production tool. So we've got Nectar 3 here. Tell us what Nectar is. Where does the plugin fit into the whole production paradigm?
So Nectar is one of our most beloved offerings. It is a 360-degree solution for vocal mixing, vocal production, that sort of thing. And we are, like you said, on generation 3 now. So you can put this on a lead vocal, background vocals. You can put this on vocals that are going out to YouTube or a podcast. It's all about vocals,
right,
and making sure that they sound as good as they possibly can.
Right, and having everything in one plugin to do all that production is super convenient. It makes it really fast to work.
Well, I mean, we've learned a lot since Nectar 2 came out. That was 5 years ago. In that half decade, we've learned a lot about how to make plugins amazing. So I'm talking interplugin communication, smart DSP, machine learning, assistive technology. We've poured all of that into Nectar 3 to make sure that the next generation of Nectar is more revolutionary than evolutionary. So we're really excited to be here to show it off, and can't wait to get it in the hands and screens of everyone out there. Right,
absolutely awesome. Well, why don't you give us a tour of what's new in Nectar 3?
Cool, happy to. Okay, so let's jump into everything Nectar 3. Now, there's a lot to cover. The first thing you notice when I pull the plugin up on the screen here is just how different it looks from Nectar 2. It's been completely overhauled. So new look and feel, and maybe the most exciting thing, at least to me, is the fact that it can be resized. So now we can get this big, beautiful canvas if we're EQing, compressing, gating, whatever it happens to be, and we can just bring it in and out just like that. So let's just talk about how the plugin behaves a little bit. So we have pitch as our first stop here. We have vocal correction here, and we have an EQ next. Then we have the compressor, and over here on this plus sign we can add a whole bunch of other modules. De-esser, delay, dimension. Dimension is our sort of effect module where we have chorus, flanging, phasing, and we can just add them very easily, just like this. Reverb, here's saturation. And once we've populated the top here with these modules, I can just go through and reposition them to customize my signal chain. So that's how easy it is to do all that stuff. And you'll notice these little mix sliders here. This is parallel mixing. So if we just want to introduce a little bit of the effect and mix it with the dry signal, we can do that. This is a standard in all our other plugins as well, like Neutron and Ozone. We brought it here to the Nectar family as well. So let's start with the EQ, ostensibly the most important part of Nectar. And it works like this. We want you to reach in and really touch your audio. You'll notice it looks very different from Neutron and Ozone. That's because there's an interactivity kind of level that we want you to engage with the EQ. So when I drag my mouse over, this little plus sign emerges from there. I click, drag, and I've added a node. And a little heads-up display populates here. So from here, we can turn the node on or off, solo it. We can change the shape to whatever we want to change it to. We see frequency and gain here, so we just move this around, and we see that move with it. And I have this little side panel here which introduces some new DSP into Nectar, which I'll show you in just a moment. But I just want to cover a little bit more here on the EQ, and that's that, if I want, I can add nodes pretty much anywhere. And I can go all the way to 24 nodes if I'm so inclined. And it's just really easy and fluid to just add things wherever you want. You get very technical. So that's how the EQ works with this new kind of interactive touch the audio vibe. Same thing is true of the compressor. I'm going to play some audio and watch how the screen changes and reacts to the moves that I make as I throw down the threshold in Nectar 3.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always thought we'd have another chance. I thought we'd have another try. Don't feel so bad.
So we see the gain trace that scrolls across, and we can change the algorithm from digital to vintage to solid state. We can change the attack, ratio, release, makeup gain. But again, we're just diving into the audio, no menus populating the screen left and right and all the rest of it. It's just really easy and simple and fluid to reach in and change the audio for the better. So we have other modules here that work in the same way, the De-esser, for example. If I bring this over, you can see that we can bring down the threshold like this and change the area which we want to de-ess. For example, the gate module. We have open and close settings here, and we have hysteresis, which is kind of like a threshold for the threshold to allow for smoother gating. And that's what I'm doing when I change the size of this window from open to closed here. So everything in Nectar 3 is about visualizing the audio and reaching out and touching it. And we're really excited to see how people are going to use this to really make their vocals sound amazing. So let's jump into one of the newest features of Nectar 3. And if you know Neutron, if you know Ozone, if you just know about iZotope, you know that we've been introducing assistive tech into our plugins, and Nectar 3 is no exception. So we go to the top here and we see Vocal Assistant. When I press this, we get the Assist box here. We'll talk about Unmask in a moment. And what it's going to do is allow you to choose a kind of vibe, a flavor. What do you want Nectar to make your vocals sound like? Do you want to go for a vintage vibe, maybe soul, blues, that sort of thing? Modern, think top 40 or maybe electronic music. And maybe you're doing vocals not for music, but for a podcast or YouTube. Switch to dialog, and that'll get you a nice dialogue sound or starting point. And then we have intensity here at the bottom. Light, so how hard do we want to push the processing of Nectar to conform to one of these vibes, vintage, modern, or dialogue? Do we want to push, some of the horsepower in that direction? Maybe we want to push, halfway, moderate, or we really want to conform with aggressive to a vintage, modern, or dialogue sound. I'm going to go for modern and moderate, and I'll press next. And you'll see that now Nectar is asking me very politely to play some audio so that it can do some work, listen, and identify a number of problems. So I'm going to press the space bar, and we'll just see Nectar go through and make some changes to the audio and help me come up with a nice starting point for mixing this vocal.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always thought we'd have another chance. I thought we'd have another try. Don't feel so bad, I know you tried. I'm sharp as nails and thick as ice. I feel no cold at night, no warm.
So let's take a look at what it did here. It set an input level. That was the first thing that it did. Next, it determined the optimal signal to set the auto level meter, which I'll show you in a moment. This meter is going to help you make sure you get a nice consistent level over the course of the song, which means no more having to automate, the vocal passage when the singer starts to go down in energy. We have technology to take care of that for you. It applied a little bit of settings in the EQ based on what it heard in the vocal and the characteristics, the timbral characteristics that it heard. It set some settings for the pitch correction in the pitch module. It set some settings in the gate module for us. It did some subtractive EQ as well to make sure that it's listening for and taking care of resonances that might cause problems. So if you have someone with a very sharp harmonic somewhere, if that doesn't get taken care of before you add EQ and compression, that gets sort of highlighted down the road in the signal chain. So it listens for that too. It also listens for de-essing, and this is brand new DSP. It will automatically set the de-esser where it's hearing sibilant. So that's brand new as well. Adds a little bit of compression, and finally a little bit of reverb to just lift the vocal. And now that I've talked about all that, I'm going to press accept, and you can see exactly what it did here. So the first EQ, that's our subtractive EQ, right? It set these nodes down here just like that. Then it listened for sibilants and set the de-esser accordingly. EQ2 is our kind of tonal EQ. It sort of brightened things up here, as you can see, past 3K or so. Our compressor is down here. It shows a solid state compressor algorithm. And then we have our reverb, which I didn't show you earlier, so it's a good time to talk about it now. You see that we have a filter here in the reverb. So this is going to protect the vocal from reverb. And what we can do here is protect just the midsection here from reverb, so as to make the vocal more intelligible. And I can even dip down over here to make sure that what's happening, from around 300 to 3K is also not affected by the reverb to, again, increase intelligibility. And you see that we only add a little bit of reverb here on the mix slider. It's only set at 8. And this is just to make sure that we're not drenched in reverb. But why don't we do a quick before and after of before we got to the starting point, and then after with Vocal Assistant.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always thought we'd have another chance. I thought we'd have another try. If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always thought we'd have another chance. I thought try.
So my vocal sounds nice and polished now, but this isn't the end. It's just the beginning. I want to make some changes. The first change I want to make is just to add a little bit more reverb, especially when I hear it in the context of the song. I'll unsolo the vocal and just see if I want to make any tweaks here.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always thought we'd have another chance.
I can add a little bit of delay as well, very common to do. I think I'm going to choose maybe 16th notes and just bring this down and also protect certain elements of this vocal from the delay, again, so as to increase intelligibility. I just wanted a little bit of time-based effects here.
If I think it's fair, doesn't.
And the nice thing is I can solo the delay just to hear what my settings sound like in the context of just that module, not everything else. And this will help me kind of fine-tune my parameters.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always thought we'd have another chance.
Now let's unsolo it.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always.
Let's do another before and after. Here's before.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares.
And here's after.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always thought we'd have another chance.
And if you think it's too loud or too quiet, you can always just change the output over here on the input and output meters. So if you want, you can just bring this down a little bit. It'll retain the totality of all the effects that you've done, but just brings it, a little bit quieter or a little bit louder. It's up to you. And speaking about loudness, you'll notice the ALM. This is the auto level meter. This is what I was mentioning during the vocal assistant pass. The auto level meter is going to make sure that you get a consistent level. It's around -8 RMS or so, with a throw of plus or -3 dBs, just to make sure that you have a nice consistent vocal the whole way through. And again, this is going to make sure that you are not drawing automation to, catch energy where it was falling down or boost things or anything like that. This is just going to make leveling your audio really easy. Again, all within the Nectar framework here. So I want to go over the EQ because there's some really cool stuff that I have yet to show you over here. So again, we talked about resonance, right? What if we want to not just statically push down resonance in a vocal? By this I mean, in a vocal you have a timbre. This is what makes up the instrument, whether it's a voice or piano, anything has a series of harmonics. And sometimes when something is recorded, we get resonances. We get certain harmonics that are just louder and stressed more than others. So we can use the visuals that the EQ gives us to decide maybe where some resonances are poking out, and then we can use some of the new technology in the EQ to tame them dynamically. I'll show you what I mean here. So I'm going to play and look at what's happening in the EQ.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always thought we'd have another chance. I thought we'd have.
I feel like right around number 3 here we have a node that's kind of peaky, a little out of control. So what I'm going to do, go to my heads-up display for node number 3, hit the side panel, and go to frequency here, and now I've engaged EQ follow. And what this is going to do is track that harmonic wherever it goes and suppress it. I'll show you what I mean.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always thought we'd have another chance. I thought we'd have another try.
I can set another one right here for its kind of cousin who's hanging out there poking through a little bit too.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always thought we'd have another chance. I thought we'd have another try.
So this is the great way to make sure that you are taming resonances before you put compression and any saturation, because if you don't take care of those things, when you add more stuff that brings up the level, especially nonlinear tools like saturation, where it's not a one-to-one thing, it'll just bring it up and be out of control. You want to make sure that you're listening for those resonances and maybe tackling them with EQ follow so that they don't cause problems down the road when you're adding more stuff to your signal chain. Let's take a look at some of the other modules in Nectar. We focused a lot on the EQ and compressor and reverb. If we hit the plus button here, we get a few different ones. So we have saturation, for example. We have our algorithms from which we can choose here, retro, tape, analog, and I can change the amount going through here, and I can also do a little bit of a low-pass filter just to get nice and retro if I want to. And again, we have the mix over here to control the amount you're putting with the dry signal. So let's have a listen to that.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always thought we'd have another chance.
That might be a little bit much. Let's try analog.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares.
We see those little streaks of orange going across the spectrum, and that's showing us where the kind of concentration of saturation is happening, and you're going to get different concentrations of energy depending on the algorithm that you choose. So we also have the dimension module, which I mentioned earlier. So if you want to go for kind of like a Tame Impala kind of vibe, you can do that with the chorus, flanger, and phaser here.
If I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always thought we'd have another chance. I thought we'd have another try.
Sometimes the thing that helps your vocal poke through the mix a little bit is just a little bit of chorusing. It's no secret that guitars love chorus as well, and that's a trick, a time old trick, to get them to kind of poke through. Now we also have harmony in here where you can add voices to the audio. So it's the same kind of behavior as the EQ. Just scroll around, you see a little plus sign, you can add a voice, another heads-up display, surprise, surprise, and you can change the interval. So we can go up 12 or unison or down 12, and we can just click to populate this canvas here with voices. And the thing that controls the scale of the voices is, if I press the set scale, the pitch module right over here. So this is right there at the beginning, and I can hit correction to turn correction on. You see we get this fun little graphic that shows us where we are and where we're trying to go with the scale, which we can change right here. See, chromatic, go up or down 12, same thing. I'll just show you a little bit about how that behaves. This might not sound great, but you should see it.
I think it's fair, doesn't matter if nobody cares. I always thought we'd have another chance. I thought we'd have another try.
So the thing to note here is that with pitch, in Nectar 3, it's more of an effect. It's more like a kind of T-Pain effect or something like that. If you want super smooth, natural pitch correction, you're in luck, because iZotope is partnered with Ceremony, who have allowed users to, those who download Nectar 3, get Melodyne 4 Essential. This means that you get top class, what the pros use, pitch correction, and not just for vocals. It's a very awesome tool for, you know, changing drum timing and all the rest of it, but this is what the pros use. And now that Logic is up to date with the latest standard of ARA, which is audio random access, you can actually instantiate Melodyne right on the track, hit the space bar, the pitch view will populate with the blobs, they call them, and you can very transparently alter or correct the pitch of the vocal right inside your digital audio workstation. So we're really excited about this partnership. And so think of pitch in Nectar like an effect, a very pronounced effect, and think of Melodyne 4 Essential as your very natural, organic pitch correction tool, which will change the pitch but retain the integrity and the soul of the singer's performance. The last thing I want to show you with Nectar 3 is the inter-plugin communication compatibility factor, and that's that if you have another iZotope plugin, Nectar can probably talk to it or know about it, and we have built some really cool technology to make sure that your vocal stays atop everything else in your mix. I'll show you how it works. So let's say that you've identified something in the track that is interfering or masking with your vocal. That's not good, because the vocal should, at least in music like this, be the crown jewel. It should be the most important thing. So, for example, in this track here, I'm noticing that I've got a few tracks that are kind of competing with my vocal. The first is a Voyager. I'll just solo that so you can hear it. There's also a Celeste over here, which is, you know, in that kind of range of our singer. We have a guitar down here too. So what I'm going to do is cluster these three tracks together. You can do this in your own DAW. I'm just going to create a stack because we're in Logic. And now I will place a instance of Relay, which is the next generation of Mixtap. Those familiar with Mixtap from Neutron 2. It's just a channel ops plugin, so you can, you know, change panning, gain, width, mono, you know, channel swap, that sort of thing. But the really special thing about Relay is that I can now talk to Nectar. Same goes for if I have a Neutron 2 or another instance of Nectar on a track that I consider to be the source of the masking. Any one of those plugins will be able to talk to Nectar. So right now we're just going to stick with Relay. I'll close it. And we'll go back to Nectar 3. And I'm going to go to the Vocal Assistant and tell Vocal Assistant that I don't want assistance right now with getting me a starting point. I want to unmask this vocal track from that cluster that I created because I'm hearing problems. So I'll press Unmask, and now I'll just solo so you can hear what I'm doing here. I'll solo the masking sources stack and the vocal and press Next. And what it's going to do is listen to the relationships between those two tracks and then put an EQ on the relay where it's identified collisions, and that EQ is going to very carefully push down anything that's in the way of my vocal. So here's how it works. Press Unmask, press Next, select my source. It's going to be my masking sources, and that's the relay that we placed earlier. Press that, press Next.
Thick as ice, I feel no cold at night, no.
It's that quick. So now when I go over to the relay, we see a little window here. Unmasking Tara Naomi's dry vocal #1. That is the vocal track that we have our Nectar 3 on. So now I can toggle back and forth and hear that EQ that's pushing down information in the masking sources track to make way for the vocal. I don't want to shove down and turn down the masking sources. I just want to create a pocket for the vocals, and that's what unmasking does. Let's do some before and afters. Listen carefully, headphones if you have them, or some good monitors.
Thick as ice, I feel no cold at night, no warm inside. I got nothing to lose, and nothing I got nothing to lose, and nothing I got nothing to lose.
Especially when we bring all the other instruments in. This kind of unmasking work is really important in the context of the entire mix. So let's do, again, a few more before and afters with everything playing. Here's before.
I'm sharp as a nail, and thick as ice. I feel no cold at night, no warm inside. I got nothing to lose, and nothing I.
So this kind of unmasking doesn't have to happen, you know, cluster of tracks or track to track. I mean, it could be a guitar and a vocal, or, you know, left-hand piano and a vocal if you have a low singer or something like that. What if you are a rapper or someone doing hip-hop and you buy a beat and all you have is this big stereo track and you want to put your vocal on it? You don't have access to the multi-tracks like we do here. You can't turn things down and up. All you have is that stereo beat to work from. The same workflow applies. We can unmask a vocal from an instrumental backing track. I'm going to show you how that works too. Okay, so now we're in this new session, and all we have is, like I mentioned before, a lead vocal and a beat. Here's that lead vocal.
Same energy when I begin to elevate. I've been working hard and on my own.
Here's the beat. And here they are together.
Same energy when I begin to elevate. I've been working hard and on my own. I just stay in.
Let's do a 1-2 punch. I want to use Vocal Assistant to get my mix to a good place on this rap vocal, and I want to unmask it at the same time. I can do that. So again, we have to put something on the stereo beat so it can talk to Nectar. A relay is already on here, so that's good for me. And I'm going to go to the vocal, call up Nectar 3, go to my assistant, and choose Assist and Unmask. I'll press Next. Modern vibe sounds good. Moderate intensity. Choose the source of the masking, right? My relay is right there. It can identify it thanks to the interplugin communication. Press Next. Play some audio.
Same energy when I begin to elevate. I've been working hard and on my own. I just stay embarked upon my road. I give all the heart when all y'all don't. I dodge your cons and conquer all my pros. I don't got time for a hater. I got time for you guys to debate. Try and change lives, break minds at the matrix. Try and show a little child that his mind's so much. Same energy when I begin to elevate. I've been working hard and on my own. I just stay embarked upon my road. I give all the heart when all y'all don't. I dodge your cons and conquer all my pros. I don't got time for a hater. I don't got time for you guys to debate. Try and change lives, break minds at the matrix. Try and show a little child that his mind's so much. Same energy when I begin to elevate. I've been working hard and on my own. I just stay embarked upon my road. I give all the heart when all y'all don't.
There we go. We're done. I'll press Accept, and now in 30 seconds or so, we mixed the vocal, got it to a starting point, and we unmasked it from a stereo beat. So let's do some before and afters just to hear what we did on the vocal. I'm just going to solo the vocal so we can hear it. Here's before.
Same energy when I begin to elevate. I've been working hard and on my own. I just stay embarked upon my road. I give all the heart when all y'all don't. I dodge your cons and conquer all my pros.
Here's after.
Same energy when I begin to elevate. I've been working hard and on my own. I just stay embarked upon my road. I give all the heart when all y'all don't. I dodge your cons and conquer all my pros. Hey, I don't got time for a hater.
And now let's bring in the beat, and I'm going to use the unmasking feature and do some before and afters too. So here's before without unmasking.
Same energy when I begin to elevate. I've been working hard and on my own. I just stay embarked upon my road. I give all the heart when all y'all don't. I dodge your cons and conquer all my pros. Hey, I don't got time for a hater. I don't got time for you guys to debate. Try to change lives, break minds at the matrix. Try to show a little child that his mind's so same energy when I begin to elevate. I've been working hard and on my own. I just stay embarked upon my road. I give all the heart when all y'all don't. I dodge your cons and conquer all my pros. Hey, I don't got time for a hater. I don't got time for you guys to debate.
So again, unmasking just makes sure that there's a nice pocket so that the vocal is intelligible. And in like half a minute, I was able to mix the vocal and unmask it from a stereo track. I'm really excited to see what other people do with this technology. And yeah, can't wait to get it in your hands.
Jeff, thanks so much for giving us a tour of Nectar 3. There's so much new stuff in here. It's so useful. And of course, the plugin itself is just ideal for any type of vocal production.
Well, thank you. We hope our users feel the way you do.
I'm sure they will. Once they get their hands on it, they're going to love it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great to see you. And thank you for joining me for the Sweetwater Minute. I'm Mitch Gallagher.